Career-driven programs could be growing at Barnstable High School. We've got details on this episode of Barnstable Today. It's Wednesday, January 23rd, 2013. I'm Sarah Colvin. Focusing on a career, whether you choose to go to work right out of high school or head out to college to pursue a degree, is something many educators think should begin at a young age. But just how to make the transition from school to the workforce and what path to follow is certainly a tricky question to answer, both for students and for educators. Barnstable Superintendent of Schools, Dr. Mary Chakowski, is looking at ways in which to enhance the career program at the high school. Last night, the school committee spent some time talking about what's best for the students. Dr. Chakowski says she's hoping to give the program a boost.
Specifically, we currently have 3 pathways that currently exist. One is the culinary arts, hospitality, management, and tourism. The other is around the medical careers and our early childhood education and care. But we're looking to add 2 new career majors that promote emerging career opportunities on the Cape, and that is the environmental technologies, which includes coastal studies, environmental sciences, and other STEM areas. And the other career academy is the creative economy, with a focus on creative and cultural industries that include the arts and commerce, graphic design, broadcasting, film editing, visual and performing arts. So this is a very important grant that we're hoping to secure funding for, to be able to expand our efforts around preparing students to be college and career ready.
Kate Gray, who served on the Massachusetts School Council Task Force and was Director of School Counseling for Blackstone Regional Technical High School, was tasked with studying Barnstable's programs. We bring you highlights from that report.
Look at some of the data that exists right now. 54% of young college grads are unemployed or underemployed, and at the same time there are 3.4 million jobs vacant. So there's a disconnect between what we're doing in our schools and what is required in the workforce. And I think it's really to your credit as a district that you're really tackling these questions. And I kept hearing the word flexibility in your conversation and the whole idea of having a different kind of schedule going forward, because I really think that that's what the future is going to require of all districts. But really, all young people must be prepared for successful careers, regardless of what they pursue immediately following high school. And the charge is that folks need to think about not only the academic development, but the personal and social development, as well as workplace readiness, so that all students have the knowledge and skills to be ready for career, because all of us have a career eventually. You know, college is not the end point. I think that's the major argument going forward at this point. So the possibilities going forward. I believe that Barnstable has the potential to be a real leader in career readiness in Massachusetts. But what I think needs to happen is to take the bits and pieces that currently exist and make it much more intentional, systemic, data-driven, and have it be for all students, so that you don't have some kids who are thinking about the world of work after they graduate and some who aren't, but really everybody needs to be thinking about who they're going to be in the long run. And I think for the kids who traditionally are career-oriented, I think that for them, the push is for them to realize the importance of the academic rigor required for them to really make a meaningful family-sustaining wage. So that kind of education across the board needs to happen. And
Barnstable High School Principal Pat Clark and Gray recap the presentation.
High School does those conversations with the school counseling department better than any of the 3 prior places I've worked, and some of those places are neighboring towns. So in terms of, however, we don't have that in a place where we can hand it to you to read the text of the conversations that Jen Clark and her department have, in terms of framing it for students, so we're putting any artificial ceiling over a student who should be going beyond. And I know that the idea of a 4 or 5 year college and career readiness plan, and the document that Katie looked at and the documents that Jen works with, do force the conversations at home. And maybe you've had them as a on the customer end of this, but students who are we see can can be pushed to go beyond. We certainly don't want them to think that ServSafe certification is the end of some kind of line for them. It may be something that helps them get the summer job, that gives them the introduction. If the Roadhouse Cafe is going to hire them when they're 16 years old and they meet Mr. Colombo, who owns multiple restaurants in our community, that might be a good thing in the summertime before they go on to the Culinary Institute of America. But the idea is I agree with you wholeheartedly, we can't say, well, you've got your ServSafe certification, so now you're all set. And I think, I know that the conversations are happening because I've observed some of them in evaluating school counselors, but we don't have it in a place to show you how those conversations are taking place. And maybe that's something we should think about. Thank you.
One of the things that was included in the grant proposal was an exploratory at the 8th grade level, similar to what you're talking about. All tech schools do it at the 9th grade level, and students have an opportunity to explore a variety of different options, and through that exploratory they hear about the salaries and the long-term employment opportunities. In the grant, we thought it made more sense to do it in 8th grade. So I couldn't agree with you more that those conversations about rigor and long-term earning power need to start really 7th or 8th grade, because it's at that point that you're going to make the decisions about whether you're going to take the lab sciences that are rigorous or the math classes that are rigorous. And if you wait until 11th or 12th grade, you may have missed the boat. So I think the earlier the better. And really, again, that's where the role of counselors comes in with the training, to really work with students to understand the world of work and the world of opportunity as it exists. So built into the grant, and hopefully it comes your way, not only the exploratory for students, but also a lot of professional development for counselors and so forth, to be more on top of the kinds of things that are available and the opportunities. And certainly the work of the task force that I was part of was all about having a more highly qualified and skilled workforce, and not settling for the entry-level positions.
School committee members spent much time discussing potential changes, and many thoughts and ideas were brought up. Some were concerned with the idea of possibly starting career training too early, and others, like school committee member Chris Joyce, felt it's important to students to learn that learning is a lifelong pursuit and doesn't necessarily end with a cap and gown.
This conversation may have come up, but in this curriculum, I find I employ a lot of people, some with college education, some without. And what I do, one of the biggest frustrations I see is people's lack of continuing to learn. And somehow we have to get across to these young people, if you graduate with your master's degree or go into a technical situation and go into a technical career, learning is a lifelong process, and it's a healthy way of living. It's as healthy, I think, as exercising. And we are not seeing that in young people today. I think their thought is that part of my life is over, and though they may be very smart in a small sector, I think we need to somehow get across in some part of this curriculum, learning is a lifelong process.
We'll hear more about this plan when Superintendent of Schools Dr. Mary Chakowski joins us on Monday morning's edition of Barnstable This Morning. Meanwhile, for Barnstable Today, I'm Sarah Colvin.